this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. As promised, viewers' orchid question time. Should be a regular event. I'm aiming for Thursday each week. It might be Wednesday sometimes, but I'm aiming for Thursday each week. And I'm hoping to do it as regular as clockwork, let's say, unless I'm out for that day, in which case I'll move to Wednesday. But I'm hoping this will be regular. Yeah, so every Thursday there'll be a viewer's orchid question time. And some people have suggested I do it live. Yes, that's an idea, but I'm limited to the time of day if I do it live. I need it to be right at the end of the UK day, otherwise people in the States can't join in. It puts a time limit on me, whereas if I just choose the day and don't do it live, when I film it doesn't matter at all. It'll get posted sometime during the day when I've finished messing about with it, because these will take a bit of messing about. Right, a few rules of the game. Not rules, but guidance to stop you wasting your time, basically. I will only deal with plants I know about, and in the main, that is plants I grow. Yeah? So it's no good asking me about catasetums. I don't grow them. I know nothing about them. I don't need to. If ever I get one, I'll go and look it up and find out and ask people. But until I get them, I don't want to know. It's as simple as that. And that applies across the genera. If I don't grow it, chances are I don't know much about it. But you can catch lucky sometimes, where although I haven't got one now, I may have had one in the past. So I might know about it. So takes your chances. But I'll put the line under catasetums straight away. Because they are popular, many people have got them. They do have their problems. I'm not your solution. Simple as that. Go elsewhere. So that's that. I will try and say who asked the question, but I can only do channel names, obviously. Some of the channel names don't lend themselves to being read out very easily, but I'll do what I can. And I intend to keep them relatively short, and on that grounds I've got a clock under my nose. I know what time I started, so I know what time I want to end. And I'll do as many questions as it takes to get up to that conceptual time limit. It's not a cut-off. There isn't going to be an alarm go off and it's not that sort of cut-off. But I don't want these to be too long. Questions can be stored up till the next time. I might get a whole week with no questions. You know, so I come to Thursday and there's nothing. That could happen. It's unlikely, but it could happen. Right, starting at the beginning then. Question number one, how is the smoking going? Well, that's orchid related, isn't it? The no smoking is going fine. I'm way beyond the point at which it could be a problem now. Way beyond that point. I do still get relapses where I make a coffee and go to walk towards the back door and think, oh, I don't need to go outside, do I? I don't smoke anymore. But it's going fine. You know, only the first couple of days really, then it's done. So that's that out of the way. Right, combining two questions. I'm not sure I'm going to pronounce this channel name wrong, but it's Sinini 1100, and that combines with Hanafi Irvin. First question is, how are the Psychopsis and the Cattleya doing? And the other question is about Psychopsis. So, right, plants. I did say I'll hook plants out in advance and then promptly forgot. Right, this is my little, relatively young Psychopsis. It is a hybrid, it's not actually a species, and I have no tag on it, although in my notes I do know what it's called. This was the little young growth it had when I got it, which is maturing, so it is pushing on. And the other one out this side is doing the same, and the leaf's now expanding. So the two growths that it had when I got it, the young growths, have pushed on and are starting to mature. And I've just noticed today, right on the end of my finger, is the first sign of any new roots whatsoever. Sorry, root, singular. So it is coming into growth. Now I'd expect that from this plant. These are warm growers. This is not a happy bunny at the moment. It's too flipping cold. certainly at night. Daytime temperatures, it's just about okay at the bottom end of its range, but at night it's too cold. So it's not really growing to any extent. And I'm surprised that these young growths actually manage to virtually mature through the winter months. But they have. So it's coming on. So that's that one. And while I've got it in my hand, I'll do the other part of the question is, can Psychopsis spikes branch? And the simple answer is yes. But under normal circumstances, they won't. Under normal circumstances, they will grow and grow and grow, and you sit there wondering when on earth it's going to end, and eventually a bud will form and you'll get your first flower. And then that flower will drop off and you'll already probably be able to see the next bud behind it. And it will carry on that process. Then that bud will open, new flower, drop off, next bud. This can go on for as much as 10 years on that single spike. That's how they grow normally. So why would it branch? If you lose that growing bud, it'll trigger damage, and at that point it might branch. No guarantee, but they do branch as a consequence of breaking a spike, as long as the break is quite high up the spike. If you break the spike right down near the base, it's probably not going to branch, and then it would attempt to grow a new one at some point in the future. I've never managed to grow a Psychopsis spike from scratch to blooming. All the ones I've ever had have had a spike on them. Until now, no spike. We'll see how we do with that. If I can get a spike by the end of this growing season, I'll be over the moon. I don't know how long they take to grow. I mean, it could take 9 months to flipping mature. Anyway, that's that one done. And the other one was the Cattleya. How is it doing? Well, the simple answer is it's doing okay on the grounds that it's doing nothing. So it's not going forwards or backwards. It's doing nothing. Absolutely nothing. Hasn't grown any, hasn't started any new roots, and hasn't started any new growths. But again, this is a warm grower under normal circumstances, so it's probably not that happy in my winter time. And for those who want to know, it's Cattleya africana. And it's a single species genus. In other words, the genus only has that plant in it. That's it. That's the one. It's unusual in the plant world to be like that. So I won't say it's going downhill, but it's not going uphill either. It's doing absolutely nothing. But from my book, that means it's fine. It means it's not dying. It's not going down. It's not dropping leaves. It's not doing anything adverse. It's just calm. Just doing nothing. And I suspect when the better weather comes, longer days, this is a very high light orchid. This hangs out the top of the trees, right up in the canopy. Very bright light, this one. Needs, whether it needs that to grow, or whether it needs that to bloom, or both, I don't know. But anyway, it's still with me. It will, I believe, start to grow when the warmer weather comes and the longer days. It's up in the roof. I'm giving it good light. So we'll see how it does. So that's that one. I'll put that one back actually, because otherwise it's going to be in my way. Right. Where's the hook gone? Come on. The trouble with using thin wire, when you go to hang your plants up, the wire's only got to touch something and it bends. And then the hook bit isn't where it should be, and you're sort of going like that and nothing's happening. It's just, what's going on? It's the hook moves. Right, and we need to cross these off as we go. No smoking, fine. Psychopsis branch, done. Wasn't Psychopsis, that's that one. Right, the next one is a question that has no definitive answer. It's more an advice thing. And it's somebody's actually asked, it's CT Sarah is the channel, asked for a list of, well, not that easy, of orchids suitable for the tropics. Now we all try and grow tropical orchids miles away from the tropics and all the inherent problems. But what about if you live there? What about if your day temperatures are above 30 all the time? and your night temperatures only go down to perhaps 27 or 28. Not all orchids are going to live in that environment. But the easiest way I look at it is that if you come from somewhere like the Philippines, Malaysia, you know, the southern coastal areas, Thailand, Laos, yeah, all that sort of stuff. If you come from those areas, I would suggest the best orchids to grow are the ones that grow there anyway. So you've got an awful lot of choices in the dendrobiums for a start, straight away. That's where they come from. So you've got loads of choices there. And obviously in the wild, some of those are incredibly rare nowadays. But in cultivation, they might not be. So whereas something may be wild in your native, rare in your native country, up the local nursery, they may have hundreds of them. Yeah, so you've got choices there, definitely, and in that environment, Cattleyas should do well, especially at those that like the higher light and higher temperatures. There are some cooler growing Cattleyas that might not do so well. The thing you need to watch though, in those countries with those temperatures, you've normally got an incredibly heavy rainfall and high humidity as a consequence. Some orchids will lose their new growths under those conditions. They will rot. You get the old black rot set in and stuff like that. The way round that, give them some shelter so that they don't stay in the pouring rain all day long. Yeah? Perhaps put them out in the rain now and again, or collect the rainwater and pour the rain over them under controlled circumstances. Yeah, but that's the only thing I would say is the danger point is the high humidity with the heavy rainfall during that rainy season, and some orchids that don't come from those environments might suffer with rot. Certainly some of the Cattleyas may well. But over the other side of the world, the Americas, you've got the Oncidiums and the Cattleyas. Oncidiums don't mind heat, providing they've got good humidity and you don't get the light too high. Yeah, so there are choices, but as I said, if you come from tropical countries, your own orchids that grow naturally in your wilds, even though they might be virtually extinct or incredibly rare, if they're in cultivation and you can get them, then they should do well in that environment. So that's that one. I can't really give you a list, but those are some examples. What else have we got? Now this is a strange question because it's come across in, I'll just say, not perfect English. I got no problem with that, don't get me wrong. I'm quite happy for people that are, you know, not English isn't their first language to at least have a go. They're doing better than me because I don't have a go at any other languages. But the channel name is ONO and hieroglyphic type symbols. Well, I've actually translated it, and it actually says only orchids. So it's ONO, only orchids, in that person's own language, whatever that was. I've forgotten now. And this has come up, strictly speaking, this is Ed's fault, so he's going to have to hold his hand up to this. He did a video, and it's an expression that's been used that technically is wrong. And he flushed his orchids with quite a high dose of Epsom salts. Now that's a contradiction in terms. You can't flush with a feed, can you? You either feed your orchids or you flush them. You can't flush with somewhere up, I don't know what it was, 180 parts per million of Epsom salts. But there was a purpose, don't get me wrong. I'm not pushing that logic down because I don't know anything about it. The logic was that Epsom salts sucks up any excess nutrients in the mix. So it extracts it, absorbs it, but it's still in there unless you then flush it with clean water. That would be my way of thinking. It didn't quite come over like that. So as I said, if you've mixed up some feed, I don't care if it's one element or all the elements, it's a feed. Yeah, that's not a flush. A flush is clean water and a goodly dose of it. But the question followed on from part of that is that if you change fertilisers Should you give your plants a good flush before you change fertilisers? Well, you can if you want. It'll do no harm, but I don't see the need. Personally, I don't see the need. Nonetheless, it can do no harm. So that's that. As I said, on different types of fertiliser, you could get 2 different brands of fertiliser with exactly the same percentages of all of the feed elements within them, exactly the same. They haven't got the same ingredients in them. Yeah? Take nitrogen, for instance. You know, if you had a 20-10-20, you know, you got 20% of that feed is nitrogen. But there's 3 different types of nitrogen. So they may have totally different nitrogen in them, and for orchids, it might not be the best sort, because the urea type nitrogen is not directly absorbed. It needs soil, it needs microbe activity within the soil base to change its structure. Same with the ammonium type. And those microbe things in the soil that do the work and change urea and ammonia types into nitrates, yeah, that's the sort of pond cycle if you keep fish. The work that they do it best in warmer temperatures, because they have to breed and multiply and maintain that culture within the soil. And when it's cold, they don't. So those 2 types of nitrogen are not so good, but the numbers could be the same, yeah? And it's the same with some of the other elements. They could be made up of different compounds at the lower level, so they might not be identical. But I still go with the logic of, with feed, is that orchids are plants, they need some food. But, there's always a but, they are a special type of plant. They don't need a lot. Where, I'm on about epiphytic orchids now, which is the majority, virtually everything in here, bar 1 or 2, are epiphytes. They grow on trees. Where on earth are they going to get their food from? Not in the soil. So to a greater extent, they haven't got rotting vegetation, any form of leaf fall, yeah? Plants that have died, that are, you know, that push up new growths each year and die back. They haven't got all that, because they're not down at that level, they're up the trees. So what they get is what gets washed over them. And I can assure you it's very little, yeah? So all orchids need some food. But the logic is they don't need much. And again, in nature, you got in the rainy season, it rains virtually every day. Well, they would get some food every day. The rain doesn't suddenly say, oh, it's Thursday, today we feed the plants. And then the rest of the week the rain doesn't feed the plants. Let's just be sensible about it. And they do okay. I mean, I must admit, there are some pretty manky looking wild orchids when you get out there and have a look, that are only just hanging on. We bring them into cultivation and look after them an awful lot better than they get looked after in the wild. So ours, in theory, should be better, and we try and do our best for them. Some food with all of those elements in a reasonable proportions is that's it. Don't get bogged down with it all. It's not worth it. Right. That's that one out of the way. That was quite a long question, actually. It took me a while to work out what everything was meant. Right, question from last one today. Just had a look at the clock. Last one for today. Lisa Todman asked about Cattleyas and some information about repotting and how. It's a little bit more detailed than that. First thing I will say is within the Cattleya Alliance you have those that perform differently. At some point they will all produce a flush of new roots. Now with some of them they start a new growth and out comes the flush of new roots at exactly the same time. So as the new growth progresses, the new roots push on. Yeah? That's one type. The next type will produce their new growth. Any sign of new roots? Not a light. And that growth will grow on and head towards maturity. Still no roots. and then the roots come out. So they're like late. And then there are others that don't produce any new roots until a growth is not only fully mature, but showing signs of the next one coming out. Now, is that the same as the first type? Yeah, the growth's matured without any new roots. But as the next one starts, the new roots start. That's probably got nothing to do with the previous one. It's the new growth thinking about coming on. But that is the most important thing with the Cattleya types. Repot when that flush of new roots is on the go. Not when it's all brand new, you'll break them. They break as easy as anything when they're small. So let them get, I'd say 10 centimetres. 10 centimetres? How big's 10? So I just had a complete mental block on measurements. Let's go back to old money just for today. Yeah, all right. I would say a minimum of 1 inch long, preferably 1.5 inches or more. But don't let them get all long and straggly up to their full size, because they're very brittle and they become clumsy to try and tuck in media. So that nice there, about like that. Minimum, probably maximum. Yeah, so that's the timing. But the question was also about the depth that you plant them. And I would say across the board, the rhizome should sit at the top of the media, on it, not in it. Cattleya rhizomes don't like being buried. A lot of Cattleya types will actually grow on bare bark, on bare branches and bare trunks, and their roots just thread up through the crevices. They're not in anything at all. They're on something. And they will hug close. You don't very often see a wild Cattleya hanging off the tree. You know, this idea of climbing away from your pot. They don't do that so much in the wild. They tend to hug. And I think it's a case of the roots set off in random directions, and some of them hit onto something and grab, and they pull. They help pull the plant in and hold it snug. So, yeah, Cattleya types sitting on the media. If there's a little gap underneath the rhizome, because that's the angle it ends up being potted at, no big deal. Yeah? But if you bury a rhizome, if it's in really large chunky bark, it probably won't matter. You might get away with it. But if you bury the rhizome, it's going to stay wet with your media, yeah? And it might not be drying as fast as it should. So try and sit them on the top. That's the best place for those. Right, that's that one. I'll do that one as well, because we did talk on feed. This is from Karen Gregory. Are Vandas heavy feeders? And how heavy? I'm going to stick my neck out here. If you look at where Vandas grow in the wild, they often grow on quite large trees, on the trunks, and they clamber up, sometimes up into the branches, and they can be 10 foot long, a really old plant. I mean, some of them are smaller ones like that. So they're hanging on the sides of trees. They don't tend to be branch dwellers, they tend to be trunk dwellers, because they have a natural upright growth, monopodial orchid, yeah? How would that plant in the wild get any more food than the Phalaenopsis sat next to it, or the Cattleya sat next to it, or the Oncidium sat on the branch? How would that Vanda get any more food than any of the others on that tree? I'm not going to answer that. You can answer it yourselves. It can't, can it? Yeah? But you can ask yourself that, would it grow better if it had more feed? That may not be what it would naturally get, but we're now in cultivation. We want to get the best from our plants. So I'll then switch the question round and say, are they high feeders because they can take the high feed without their roots burning and grow fine? But unless you want to set up an experiment, you have to ask yourself, do they need it? Yes, you can give it to them, but are they using it? Do they need it? Or are they just accepting it because you've given it to them? And you'd have to have a little set of virtually identical Vandas which is damn near impossible for a start. You know, that one's got 6 roots, that one's got 5, and that one's only got 3. Well, they're not the same then, are they? As far as feeding is concerned, yeah? So some identical plants, and try, you know, one on a low feed, one on a medium feed, one on a high feed, and see if there is any difference in the growth rate. Then you could satisfy yourself how they do best. I do feed my Vandas higher than most of my other orchids. Yeah. Doesn't do them any harm, but I can't say specifically whether it does them any good. And I never will be able to. All I know is it doesn't do them any harm. Whereas there are some other orchids in here, if I fed at that level, it would kill them. So that's what you're getting at. Are they high feeders naturally? No. Can they take high feed? Yes. Do they need it? Questionable. So I'll leave that one open-ended a little bit. Where was that? That was Karen. Right, that'll do for this one. That leaves me some for next time in case I don't get any new ones. And I hope you like the format. As I said, I mean, I've tried to sort of say the questions and who asked them, but by doing the pop-ups, some people tend to forget that you can pause a video. It doesn't have to run from start to finish. You know, if you're absolutely busting to pay a visit, you can pause it. So it gives people the opportunity to read the question thoroughly. If you want the answer, you have to listen to the video. You know, I'm not putting the answers in text form. So that's the general format, and that's the first one. And as it's the first one, it's a bit longer than the others will probably be. I'm going to try and aim at about 15 minutes, something like that, and get in as many as I can. Sometimes I might only get 1 or 2 in 15 minutes, and sometimes I might get a dozen. We'll see. So that's the format. I hope you like it, and don't be frightened of asking questions. I've always said there is no such thing as a silly question, but there can be a silly answer. That's my bit. And I won't answer questions that I don't know the answer to. I'm not gambling or making stuff up with other people's orchids. So it's either based on my experience and things I know, or I will say so. I'll say things like, some say that that means I don't necessarily know, but I've heard it from enough people. Some say. Yeah, so this is what others say. And I'm happy to go along with it because I've heard it enough times and from some good growers. So I'm happy to run with it. I won't be necessarily happy to run with it if it came out of a book, but then I don't read the books anyway. Gave that up years ago. So expressions like some say, or it is said that means it's not my specific knowledge. I've got it from somewhere else, but I'm happy to say it, so it's pretty reliable, even though it's not my own personal knowledge. Otherwise, it's my stuff that I've learnt over the years and evolved and everything else. Or I'll just say, I'm sorry, I don't know, like with the catacetums. I don't know. And at the moment, I don't want to know, so that's how it stays. So that's how it goes. And as I say, hope you like it. Regular feature, and see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.